In this tutorial, I will be covering Turnitin Assignments. So Turnitin is a plagiarism checker software. It also comes with the ability to check for grammar. It's got this e-rater feature that will check for grammar, usage, spelling, and some other options. It's a really nice feature, and it's useful for the instructor and for students. Turnitin is free to use, and what happens is Turnitin, once students submit their paper through Turnitin, it will check their paper against any internet resources, any professional publications, as well as other student submissions. So this will kind of tell you whether or not the student has created the material on their own, or whether they maybe got that material from another source and didn't cite it properly. So when it comes to creating a Turnitin assignment, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to hover over Assessments, and you're going to click on Turnitin Direct Assignment. I will also add that if you are going to check for plagiarism, I would recommend Turnitin Direct over the Blackboard Safe Assign. Blackboard Safe Assign doesn't have the repository that Turnitin Direct has, and it also doesn't have the nice bells and whistles like the e-rater checker and the level of checking in terms of academically how hard it checks for high school, college, and even lower school, school systems than that. So once we hover over creating, the assessments, and we want to create that Turnitin Direct assignment, we're going to name this. Then you're going to want to put your assignment instructions here. And then for submission methods, you have the ability to allow them to type their paper in or to upload a file. I would highly recommend using the file upload. The problem with the text submission is students can't copy and paste because it could cause a formatting issue. It might not retain the formatting. And the text box in Blackboard expires after about 30 minutes. So if a student walks away for an hour and then comes back and tries to submit, Blackboard is not going to retain all of those settings because that text box has timed out. And that's not just a Blackboard issue, that's actually any kind of text box with that you find on the internet. So I recommend doing the file upload. For the overall grade, that's going to be how much the assignment is worth. I recommend doing this out of 100, and then you can actually use weights, but if you need to change that to a point value, you can. And then you're going to do the number of parts. So if you need students to do multiple sections of a paper, and they would have to upload the parts separately, and it won't allow them to submit until they've got all of those parts. The start date and the due date, those are going to be, when the assignment opens and when it closes, and you can also allow late assignments, but if not, it will close on the due date. The post date. Now, this is different than the due date, and it's not the date where students receive their grades. As soon as you go in and you grade it, students can see their grades. The post date refers to when students can see the grade mark. So when you go to grade your Turnitin, it's going to open up, and when you start marking, if you circle words or you circle sections and you leave comments and things like that, that is when students can see that markup. So the post date refers to the markup on their actual paper. When you're going through and you're doing your settings, I highly recommend putting the post date to be the same date as your start date. So that way, when you go through and you start marking up those papers, students will be able to see that markup immediately. Now, when it comes to the exclusions, this is what kind of materials and how much you want to exclude from the checks. So if you want to exclude by word count, you can do that. I believe 7 words or more is what needs to be cited. So if you want to exclude by word count, you can do that. Or if you want to exclude by a percentage, or if you want to include even small matches, you can set that to allow that. I typically do exclude by word count, and I do 7 words. Now, you can also exclude the bibliographic material or exclude the quoted material. However, I would recommend leaving that in because you want students to be able to see if there's a problem with the way that they're submitting their assignments or they're formatting their assignments. You want to make sure that all of that is checked so that we can make students better. Now, this E-rater is what I was talking about earlier. It's a grammar checker. So if I want to include that grammar checker, I can tell it what level of schooling I want to check. So since we're a college, we would probably want to go ahead and select advanced. You can also select the dictionary you want to use. There's some words like behavior that are spelled a little bit different from in America versus what's in England. So you can do, the U.S. English. And then here are your E-rater categories. I would recommend using all of them because, like I said, once that post date hits and students can see that markup, this will help them if they've misspelled words or if there's something in there that doesn't flow correctly. This also cuts down on the amount of time it takes for you to grade because it's going to flag some of that. And then you can also use the grade mark. For the repository, I highly recommend doing the standard repository unless you want students to submit maybe a draft. So you'll have one Turnitin assignment for the draft and then maybe one for the final paper. So it will still check to see if their paper has been plagiarized, but it just won't upload it to the repository. So this will cut down on a little work for you later. You don't have to exclude that student's paper submission. And if this was just a typical Turnitin assignment, I'm only going to have them submit it one time. I'm going to leave the standard repository, and I want to check against student papers, the internet, and the journals and the publications because I want to make sure that students aren't cheating. And then in terms of grades, now this is where you can set if you want students to see the grades immediately or not. I typically recommend leaving this setting to yes, unless you want students to get their grades all at one time. For the ignore Turnitin grades, so if you grade it within Turnitin and you set this to yes, that's not going to transfer over to Blackboard. So leave this setting on no. The report generation speed. So this talks about the originality report. So when students submit a paper, it automatically generates an originality report. Now, the second time students submit an assignment to the Turnitin, to this one particular link, it will wait 24 hours before it will generate a new originality report. And this is also the setting that will allow students to submit to it one time or multiple times. I would recommend allowing students to resubmit up until the due date. So this way you could actually have students upload it one time and say they have a huge issue with their citations, then you can allow them to see that originality report, and that way they know, okay, I've messed something up, let me fix it, and then I can resubmit. So you could also encourage students, hey, do it early, and then you can check your paper and make corrections. Now, the grading schema, this is what's going to display in the Grade Center. So for the grading schema, you would actually want to do percentage. Unless you're using points, and then you would want to use score. The Turnitin rubric, you can create a rubric and associate it with your Turnitin assignment, and that would actually allow you to go in and grade based on the rubric. So you could select the different options using that rubric. I would highly recommend students being able to view that originality report. Again, you want to make sure that we're not just grading students, we're also helping them to improve. So if they can view that originality report, like I said, if they had a major issue with their citations and flagged that, then they can go in and do better the next time they go to submit. You also have the option to allow them to submit late if you want. That's completely up to you. And the Save Instructor Defaults, if you set this setting to yes, the next time you go to create a Turnitin assignment, you don't have to worry about redoing all of these settings. You would just need to go in, redo your start date, your due date, and your post date, and then the assignment name and the instructions. So it's going to keep the majority of these settings every time you create your assignment. And then once you've got your settings set to what you want, then you'll go ahead and click Create Assignment. And then it's going to take me to my assignment inbox. So when you go in, you can actually see all of my students' names listed. And that's all you would do to create your Turnitin assignment. And this is what it will look like within that folder. So this is my Turnitin assignment sample. I can click in to view the assignment, and it's going to take me back to my submissions inbox. If I need to modify that particular assignment, I can also do that by clicking Modify. And it's pulling up all of my settings. And if I needed to update, I'd click Update. And then you can also submit papers on behalf of your student as well. So you would just go through and you would select the student name, you'd put a title, and since we only allowed one part, it would be part 1, and then I could click on the file that I need to submit, and I can submit that to this Turnitin assignment. So if you have a student that's having problems, you can submit an assignment for that particular student. But that's all you would do to create your Turnitin assignment.